Fentanyl is a potent synthetic opioid. It was introduced into medical practice as an intravenous anesthetic under the trade name of Sublamace in the 1960s. During the height of the opioid epidemic, in 2016 and 2017, the number of fentanyl prescriptions dispensed were approximately 6.0 million and 5.0 million, respectively. Fentanyl pharmaceutical products are currently available as oral transmucosal lozenges, commonly referred to as fentanyl lollipops, Actic, effervescent buccal tablets, Fentora, sublingual tablets, Abstral, sublingual sprays, Subsys, nasal sprays, Lazanda, transdermal patches, Duragesic, and injectable formulations. Oral transmucosal lozenges and effervescent buccal tablets are used for the management of breakthrough cancer pain in patients who are already receiving opioid medication for their underlying persistent pain. Transdermal patches are used in the management of chronic pain in patients who require continuous opioid analgesia. Fentanyl citrate injections are administered intravenously, intramuscularly, spinally, or epidurally for potent analgesia and anesthesia. Because of a concern about deaths and overdoses resulting from fentanyl transdermal patches, Duragesic and generic versions, on July 15, 2005, the Food and Drug Administration issued safety warnings and reiterated the importance of strict adherence to the guidelines for the proper use of these products. From April 2005 to March 2007, an outbreak of fentanyl overdoses and deaths occurred. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC/Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, surveillance system, reported 1,013 confirmed non-pharmaceutical fentanyl-related deaths. Most of these deaths occurred in Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Missouri, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania.
Well, the president of Mexico says fentanyl is an American problem.
President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said Thursday the addictive drug is not produced or consumed in Mexico. His latest comments come in spite of massive amounts of evidence that almost all of the powerful opioid consumed in the U.S. is processed in Mexico.
The Belgian pharmacologist and pharmaceutical chemist Paul Janssen developed fentanyl in 1960.
Dr. Paul Janssen was an exceptionally talented and enthusiastic scientist. He developed drugs and medicines for the treatment of numerous disease areas. 4 of them are included in the list of essential drugs compiled by the World Health Organization. Dr. Paul's father, the son of a proud farming family, became a successful doctor in Turnhout, a small town in the north of Belgium.
De geneeskunde in de jaren 2030.
The young Paul Janssen attended local schools in Turnhout. During the war years, he studied at the Faculté Notre-Dame de la Paix in Namur, Belgium, where he became fascinated by physics, biology, and chemistry. He then went on to study medicine at the Catholic University of Leuven, before departing for America, where he was introduced to modern pharmaceutical research. In 1953, and with very limited means, the recently graduated Dr. Paul began to realize his dream: the development of an independent research laboratory that would devote itself exclusively to the discovery and development of innovative medicines. Many of those around him expressed their doubts about this ambition, but Dr. Paul was not to be dissuaded. Dr. Paul's totally unacademic approach reaped almost immediate success. Within a short space of time, he and his small team had brought several successful medicines onto the market, among them Haldol, a medicine that soon received extensive coverage in the international medical and pharmaceutical journals. In the early days, the synthesis of new molecules was very much slower than it is using the techniques of today. But Dr. Paul nevertheless launched one successful product after another. From the 50s onward, Dr. Paul focused increasingly on numerous new development projects. The discovery of the anesthetic fentanyl ushered in a breakthrough in surgery.
It was at the time a revolutionary compound with a potency much greater than that of the natural opioid morphine, and a significantly greater safety margin than other pharmaceutical synthetic opioids such as dextromoramide, meperidine, and phenoperidine. Under Janssen's leadership, a deeper understanding of the structure/activity relationships led to the development of the very potent analgesics FENTANYL, alfentanil, lofentanil, and carfentanil, which could also be used for anesthesia. These drugs have been successfully used clinically for over 50 years. And have made possible complex surgeries and the successful management of chronic pain for millions of patients worldwide. Fentanyl, together with codeine, methadone, and morphine, are 4 opioid analgesics on the World Health Organization's (WHO) list of essential medicines. In California, United States in 1979, a series of deaths occurred in people who injected drugs that were subsequently attributed to an analog of fentanyl, alpha-methylfentanyl. Initially discovered and patented by Janssen, alpha-methylfentanyl had neither been evaluated in humans for safety or efficacy, nor approved as a pharmaceutical drug. This was the first recorded instance of a completely novel clandestinely synthesized opioid, and earned the sobriquet designer drug. Through the early 1980s, alpha-methylfentanyl was quickly joined by a series of other fentanyl analogs including parafluorofentanyl, 3-methylfentanyl, beta-hydroxyfentanyl, and a number of others that were identified in deaths in the west coast of the United States. Subsequently, the use of fentanyl itself became widespread due to its availability worldwide in injectable, sublingual, and transdermal forms, and it also became subject to diversion and abuse. There were isolated cases of fentanyl and its analogs being mixed with heroin in the street drug supply, such as in the Tango and Cash product sold in New York City in 1991, resulting in deaths and hospitalizations. Fentanyl was also recognized as a problem in Europe in 2012. At the beginning of 2014, the availability of fentanyl in the United States had started to increase exponentially, with crime laboratories reporting more than 4,500 fentanyl cases in 2014 and over 14,400 in 2015. Around the same time, a group of fentanyl new psychoactive substances, NPS, began to appear in the street drug market, beginning with acetylfentanyl and butyrylfentanyl. By 2017, 15 fentanyl analogs and 2 precursor chemicals had been placed under international control, and more than 20 individual substances had been detected in deaths. They have been routinely detected in drug markets in Europe and North America, and several more have been encountered in smaller, more isolated incidents, along with other non-morphine or fentanyl-related opioid receptor agonists.
Released tonight by the San Diego Sheriff's Department, it shows a deputy on the brink of death after being exposed to fentanyl. The deputy, saved by his partner who was equipped with the life-saving medicine known as Narcan. We do want to warn you, what you're about to see is difficult to watch.
I'm not gonna let you die. I need Narcan! I got you.
Dramatic body cam video capturing the moment Corporal Scott Crane of the San Diego County Sheriff's Department is promising his trainee, Deputy David Five-Eye, he's not going to let him die after Five-Eye was exposed to fentanyl while processing drugs at the scene of an arrest in early July. That discovery caught on FENTANYL's own body cam just minutes earlier.
Yeah, it's a powder.
It could be cocaine or fentanyl. It tested positive for fentanyl.
The synthetic opioid is 50 times more potent than heroin, and exposure to just a few small grains can have deadly consequences. In FENTANYL's case, the exposure and his reaction to it was almost instant.
A couple seconds later, he took some steps back and he collapsed. I ran over to him and I grabbed him and he was ODing.
Corporal Crane was equipped with the nasal spray Narcan, a prescription medicine that rapidly reverses the effects of an overdose. Still, FENTANYL needed more. Here he is, in his own words, still emotional.
My lungs just locked up. I couldn't breathe. I was trying to gasp for breath, but I couldn't breathe at all.
Are you okay? Talk to me. Oh, no. Don't be sorry. You're okay. Don't be sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about. I got you, okay? I'm not going to let you die.
Deputy FENTANYL taken by ambulance, overdosing again and again on his way to the hospital. But without his partner and that Narcan, he knows he would have been just another statistic in this country's deadly drug overdose epidemic.
While I can understand the intention behind this staged body cam footage, here is the truth. The risk of clinically significant exposure of fentanyl and its analogs to emergency responders is extremely low, as incidental dermal absorption resulting in opioid toxicity is unlikely. The American College of Medical Toxicology, ACMT, and American Academy of Clinical Toxicology, AACT, advise that the use of basic personal protective equipment, PPE, such as nitrile gloves and AN95 respirator, are sufficient protection to avoid exposure to fentanyls either by dermal exposure or inhalation. The pharmacological activity of fentanyl and its analogs is due to their activation of the opioid receptors, with primary activity resulting from activation of the muscle receptor, which is the main receptor subtype involved in pain signaling. Besides their analgesic properties, mu-opioid receptor agonists cause pupillary constriction, constipation, decreased consciousness, euphoria, and dose-dependent respiratory depression, which can lead to death. The euphoric effects of opioid agonists can lead to habituation and dependence. The delta opioid receptors also contribute to analgesia, as well as sedation, impairment of cognition, depressed mood, and motor incoordination and impairment, while the kappa opioid receptor mediates pain sensation, sedation, cognitive impairment, effects on mood, diuresis, and temperature control. Opioids with significant kappa receptor agonist binding also cause hallucinatory or dissociative effects. Overall, the typical side effect profile of opioid agonist use includes respiratory depression, sedation, sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, headache, and constipation. Tolerance to the analgesic and euphoric effects of opioids develops quickly, with doses frequently requiring adjustment for effective pain management. Cessation of opioid agonist use leads to a withdrawal syndrome, characterized by drug craving, dysphoria, anxiety, insomnia, irregular heart rate, loss of appetite, diarrhea, sweating, nausea and vomiting. The main mechanism of fatal opioid overdose is respiratory depression, leading to pathological indicators such as froth in the airways, and cerebral and pulmonary edema. A distended urinary bladder is often observed at autopsy in opioid-induced death. Fentanyl and its analogs have high potency compared to morphine. Poor control of dose, polydrug use, and patterns of repeated use are most likely contributors to the high rates of overdose, respiratory depression and death associated with these drugs. So, that's the truth about fentanyl. Sounds like fun, huh?